Chuck Schumer of New York. Senator, thank you so much for being here. We do have a lot to get to. I do want to start with developments with regard to Russia and Ukraine. The president met one-on-one with President Zelensky. Both sides called that meeting productive. Afterwards, President Trump criticized Vladimir Putin's attacks on Ukraine and said, quote, maybe he doesn't want to stop the war. He's just tapping me along and has to be dealt with differently. As the Democratic leader in the Senate, you're a member of the so-called Gang of Eight. You see intelligence about how the war is going. Are you supportive of these negotiations?
Well, look, my great fear, Dana, is that Trump will just cave into Putin. That's been the overall indications all along. And of course, the bottom line is very simple, that if we cave to Putin, if Trump caves into Putin, it's bad in three very bad ways. Number one, to just abandon Ukraine after all the sacrifice that they made, after so much loss of life, and with the rallying of the whole West against Putin, it would just be a moral tragedy to undercut Zelensky, which I believe Trump is headed in that direction. Second, it tears asunder our alliances with Europe. The Europeans have stood up for us. The whole West has stood up for us. They put in money. They've used all kinds of diplomatic and economic tools to back us. And how is Europe going to trust us ever again if Trump backs out? But third, and maybe worst of all, it's a sign that the United States is weak. It sends a signal to every dictator in China, in North Korea, in Iran, that if you stand up and bully Trump, you're going to get your way. So I am very worried about where he is headed. I think that he is in a position where he feels he can sell out Zelensky. He's sort of saying yes one day, no the next day. But overall, the trend is very, very bad.
Let's turn to what's happening here at home. The ACLU says the Trump administration deported 3 U.S. citizen children with their families, including one suffering from metastatic cancer. A judge overseeing one of the cases expressed his, quote, strong suspicion that the government just deported a U.S. citizen with no meaningful process. If that's the case, and the federal government deported U.S. citizens with no due process, what can you, as one of the top elected officials in the country, do about it?
Well, first, what he's doing here is just outrageous and against every iota of what Americans believe. And this is not the only instance. There are reportedly other instances where U.S. citizen children were deported without any due process. Due process is a hallmark of what our country is all about, rule of law, and ICE and Trump seem to break it in every single way. He believes he's a king. He is not. And the American people are totally against what he is doing in this regard. The polling that you showed today and the data from the other New York Times and Washington Post shows the same thing. We are highlighting this in every way we can, because the more the American people know, the better. That's why Chris Van Hollen went to El Salvador last week. That is why Democrats are talking about this in town hall meetings across the country. And the more the American people know, the less they're going to like what Trump does.
Your colleague from Georgia, Senator Jon Ossoff, told voters at a town hall that he strongly agrees that President Trump should be impeached. Do you agree with him? Would that be a priority if Democrats were to take back Congress?
Well, look, right now, President Trump is violating rule of law in every way. And we're fighting him every single day in every way. And our goal is to show the American people over and over again, whether it's the economy, whether it's tariffs, whether it's Russia and overseas, and whether it's rule of law, how bad he is. And, it's 2 years is too far away to predict. Our job is day to day to day to show who Trump is, what he is doing, and it's having an effect, as your poll showed. The American people are realizing.
You're not saying no.
Look, it's too far away to even judge.
Okay. Of how he is dealing with tariffs and inflation in particular, he told us explicitly, Senator, what he would do during his campaign. He said very specifically what he would do on tariffs and other issues relating to the economy. And voters still chose him over Democrats. How do you explain that?
Look, the bottom line is that no one realized the chaos. It's not tariffs themselves. I've been tough on China, and there are certain tariffs against China that are appropriate. But what he did was totally chaotic. He turned the whole world against us. Instead of focusing on China and getting the world to join us because they don't like what China does, he imposed tariffs across the board on nation after nation after nation, and now they're being allied with China. In addition, he never told the American people the kinds of tariffs he were imposing across the board, and some of them very, very high, would raise their costs. It's estimated it'll raise the American costs. American families would have to pay about $4,000 more a year. The price of food and clothing and gasoline, buying a new car, all would go up dramatically. And so he never leveled with the American people, and no one ever imagined it would be as chaotic and as poorly planned. One person says one thing one day, another person says another thing the next day, and another terrible effect it's having, Dana, on this is that businesses, I've been all around my state. I've been in 6 different districts of Republicans, talking to them, talking to the people about tariffs. And small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and large businesses are frozen, even, because they don't know what Trump will do next. And that's heading us into a recession. And what does a recession mean to the average family? You could lose your job, harder to get a new job, costs go up. So the American people are furious. The promises Trump made are far different than how it's been effectuated, and that's why his 100 days are a disaster.
Let me turn to your party, the Democratic Party, and where you are right now in the quest to try to overtake Republicans, certainly in the short term, in the midterms. Republicans have been facing a lot of heat at town halls, but also Democrats have been as well. And there's a lot of frustration towards members of your party, not just from voters, but we're even hearing it from members of your own caucus. I want you to listen to your colleague, Colorado Senator Michael Bennet, what he said this week.
I am furious with the Democratic Party because, in my view, our inability to offer a compelling vision and articulate it to the American people has resulted in Donald Trump being elected not just once, but twice. We need to come to grips with that, and we need to ask ourselves why that is.
What do you think?
Well, look, no, we're doing very well. We are totally united in focusing on Trump on a single message when it, for instance, on tariffs, how chaotic they are and how they have to be focused, on rule of law, how he's not obeying it, and we're showing that to the American people, but also on this upcoming reconciliation bill, where we Democrats have a single message, that Trump is trying to make the middle class pay for tax cuts for billionaires. Our whole party, every member of our caucus is united on that issue. Americans hate it, and we are going after them day after day. As I mentioned, I went to 6 Republican districts during our recent Easter Passover break, and talking to the voters, Republican districts, about what Trump is doing and how their congressmen ought not be embracing him. And then 4 of them signed a letter saying, well, they don't want to cut Medicaid. And so we are really united and focused and strong. The contrast that we are making between who the Democratic Party is, the party for working people, and who the Republican Party is, the party for billionaires and especially privileged people, is having a real effect. And that's why he's doing so poorly in these first 100 days. I think we're on our front foot, and every day we are fighting Trump on multiple fronts.
So there's the message, sir, and then there's the messenger. And when your very longtime friend, former roommate and colleague, Senator Dick Durbin, announced his retirement this week after 3 decades in the Senate, he said, quote, "It's time to pass the torch." We've heard that from other retiring Democrats, Gary Peters, Tina Smith, Jeanne Shaheen. They've all said it's time to let the next generation of leaders take over. Now, you indicated this week that you're going to stay put, Senate Democratic leader for this foreseeable future. Why don't you think it's time to pass the torch this week, that you're going to stay put, Senate Democratic leader for this foreseeable future? Why don't you think it's time to pass the torch?
Look, I am focused on winning, as I have always been, and and as leader of the caucus, we are united. Now, we have a lot of talent in the caucus, and my job as sort of an orchestra leader to get us play on the same theme, as you said, I've said, we're united on message, but to highlight all the talent in the caucus in different ways, and we've seen that.
And you're staying put.
With Cory Booker, with so many others. And so, of course, yes, I am staying put, and I'm fighting the fight every day, as is our caucus, in a united and successful way, as you've seen by your poll and other polls. We're showing America how bad Trump is, and showing that Republicans who embrace Trump do so at their peril.
I want to turn to a book that you have recently written and is out. It is entitled Antisemitism in America, A Warning. You talk about anti-Semitism on the right, but you also address anti-Semitism within your own party. Here's part of what you wrote, quote, "I worry also about the larger American left, which may look the other way and be too complacent or forgiving about those who exhibit anti-Semitism in their ranks." You say that's one of the biggest reasons you wrote this book.
Well, I wrote the book to warn about anti-Semitism overall in America, on the left and on the right. Conor Cruz O'Brien, the great Irish poet, said anti-Semitism is a light sleeper. And when there are times of trouble, as there are now, anti-Semitism raises its head. On the right, it's despicable and awful. I've experienced it myself. On the January 6th takeover, I was within 30 feet of these hooligans, and one of them said, "There's the big Jew, let's get them." But we've also seen it on the left, not in the Democratic Party, but on the left. And we have seen things that we never used to see before. For instance, someone getting on a subway and saying, "All the effing Zionists get off the subway." Jewish delis, which have nothing to do with Israel, having stones thrown through their windows. The head of the Brooklyn Museum, who's Jewish, but the Brooklyn Museum has nothing to do with Israel, a few blocks away from here where we're sitting, had red paint all over her. And I believe we have to alert America to anti-Semitism and teach them. That's why I wrote the book. The best antidote is for people to know the truth. Here's a terrifying fact, that 20% of people under 30 don't believe the Holocaust was a myth, and another 50% have never heard of it. We need an education, and my goal is to have this book read in the high schools and colleges across America, because I think it would just shatter the myths that are out there, which have always been below the surface and are popping up on both the left and the right much too much
I
now.
want to read something else you wrote in your book. You wrote, "At Harvard, my alma mater, more than 30 organizations signed a statement calling the Israeli regime entirely responsible for the attack. And the months since October 7th have brought too many examples, far too many, of overt anti-Semitism. American Jews being harassed, attacked, and villainized simply for being Jewish." President Trump, as you well know, says he's cracking down on Harvard and other universities because of their response, or lack thereof, to those anti-Semitic incidents that you're describing. How do you think he's doing with that?
Right. Well, first, Harvard did not do enough to curb anti-Semitism. I've been vocal about that. But let me just say this. What Trump is doing goes way beyond anti-Semitism. He is going after these universities like he's going after judges, like he's going after law firms, like he's going after the media. Because he just doesn't, he doesn't believe in democracy. He thinks he's king, as he said. And he did this at Harvard. So a bunch of us, Jewish senators, just sent a letter to the administration saying, detail the specific incidents of anti-Semitism and why cutting money off to cancer research or to Alzheimer's research has anything to do with anti-Semitism. It doesn't. He is using anti-Semitism, and it's appropriate to go after specific incidents of anti-Semitism as a pretext to hurt these great universities. It's going to hurt every American. It's going to hurt the kids at the universities who've had nothing to do with protesting, but it's also going to hurt the kind of medical research and other kinds of great research that is done at Harvard and other universities. So we sent him a very strong letter just the other day asking 8 very strong questions about why this isn't just a pretext.